walk into somewhere, feel like you're wearing a label? Maybe it's because of some regrets. Maybe it's an earned label. Maybe it's an unearned label, but somebody labeled you. Maybe it's your reputation. Maybe it's a regret. And if God is real, it sure feels like this label could be a problem trying to approach him. Yet Christmas starts with labeled people. It does. That passage that was just sung is the beginning of Matthew chapter 1. It's called the begats because in the King James it would be so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so. It's a great spot to skip over in your devotional reading. Caleb's going to be leading that song next week. Please have it memorized by then. Why does Matthew start with that? Well, context-wise, there's actually a legitimate reason why Matthew starts with that. Matthew is writing to convince a Jewish audience specifically, whereas Mark is written for a Roman audience. Matthew's writing to a Jewish audience, which is why he quotes the Old Testament like crazy in his gospel. And he starts to make sure that everyone realizes, hey, this Jesus guy, he descended from the line of David. Let's trace it all the way back so you can have confidence that this is the Messiah you've been waiting for. This is the guy. And if anything, you wanted to be part of that genealogical line. You wanted to have that in your ancestry. Now, if your family is like any other normal family, you maybe have people in your family line you are a little bit proud of. And you may have some other people in your family line that when you tell your family story, you kind of skip over them, right? If not, they're skipping over you when they tell the family story. You're the one they're skipping over, right? You would think, because Matthew has options, because there's ways to tell your entire story without telling your entire story, but still being true. And Matthew starts the Christmas story by listing and naming people, some of them who had blatant, limiting labels. Why? Because they're part of the story of Jesus, and they're actually the point of the story. Let's go back and look at that passage in Matthew chapter 1. A record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, Matthew writes, the son of David, because that's his point. He is David's son, the son of Abraham. Goes all the way back. Then he goes, Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, which is awkward, but we won't get into that one today. Perez the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Why isn't all the other mothers listed? They're not. They could have been. Specifically chose to put Rahab in there. Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed, the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of King David. Rahab has something that a lot of people have. I think pretty much we all maybe do. Rahab has a the in her name. You ever meet people who have a the in their name? Rahab's the is she is known as Rahab the prostitute. That's what she's known as in the scripture. We'll see that later as she's referred to as Rahab the prostitute. What did you talk about at church today? Christmas story? No, we talked about prostitutes today. Oh, I thought the Bible was boring. Nope, not at all. She has a the in her name. Now, some places have a the in their name, such as the Ohio State University, in which case a the is uplifting, but generally a the is a label. A the can be descriptive, but it can also be critical. Rahab the harlot, Rahab the prostitute. In the Bible, people frequently got labels and nicknames. See if you can end these for me. John the Good. Paul the apostle. Let's see if there's any Bible scholars in the room. Uriah the Hittite. Ooh, you're so awesome. That's why you're sitting in the front row. History has some. Alexander the Attila the Conan the two more. Buffy the Jabba the what's your the? What's your the? What would be on Your label. For me, what would be associated with your name and a label that people associated you with, maybe even going back, did not test that part of the story. Oh my goodness. Oh no. Oh. Well, I guess that makes the illustration even more, but now, Wendell, if you're watching online, I'm sorry I damaged the top of the table that you just refinished, but I did. All the more so why this would have been my name. This would have been my label. Camera, I'm going to stand still for a moment, production room, so people can zoom in on it. But it would have been Layman. If I wasn't being called Lemonhead, it was Layman the Loser. There was nothing I would have been voted for. Nothing I was picked. When I see people line up and say, hey, let's pick teams, that's a trigger moment for me. That's a trigger moment. Oh, crud, we got stuck with Layman. Layman. Well, that's my the. Rahab's was the harlot. The thing is, Matthew creates unnecessary tension in the story there. He could have continued to share everything he needed to share to his audience, the Jewish people that were going to read this gospel, without mentioning Rahab, but he does. I mean, do you have a nice nativity scene in your house? Can you imagine putting Rahab in it? Mommy, why is there this barely clothed woman in the nativity scene next to the shepherds? Explain that one to your kids. But Matthew does, on purpose. It's not accidental. It's on purpose. He could have skipped over that part of the story, but instead he started with it. Friends, God does not edit our stories like we would. We would edit out the worst parts. What if he wants to start with what you want to edit out? The label that you think would disqualify you. What if that's what he wants to use as a launching pad for you? The whole context of Rahab in the scripture is Moses is dead. The Exodus has happened. They've gone through the Red Sea. They've crossed the Jordan. Whether you remember Prince of Egypt or the movie The Ten Commandments, they're on the other side of the water. And here they go. And now they're getting ready to go to the first city, Jericho, that God has told Joshua, the leader, to take. They arrive in Jericho. They send spies out to Jericho. The spies get spotted. They go hide. They duck into a house. It happens to be Rahab's house. We pick it up in Joshua chapter 2, verse 10. We have heard, who's talking? Rahab. Rahab the harlot, Rahab the prostitute, has this long passage in the Jewish scriptures, and she's not even Jewish. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt. She's talking to the spies about what God has done for the Israelites. And what you did to Sihon, and Og, I think I can pronounce Og, the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted. We heard of it. We heard about the greatness of God. We heard about your God. Our hearts melted and everyone's courage failed because of you, for the Lord your God is God. Didn't the people in Jericho have God? They have lots of gods. Lots of gods. But your Lord, for the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Now then, swear to me, by my idols? No. By my God? No. By the Lord your God, that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. She's protecting and hiding them. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and my brother, my father and my mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. She's already confident. Rahab has more faith and confidence in God that the Israelites are going to take Jericho than the people of Israel do at this moment. The men replied, our lives for your lives. The men assured her, if you don't tell what we're doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. How many acts of faith does it take to change your life? One. One simple act of faith, based on what she had heard. She hadn't seen. just based on what she had heard. In spite of what she'd been taught, in spite of what she had other things, she goes, I think your God is God. What would one simple act of faith feel like for you? For where you're at? After they had taken the city, Joshua chapter 6:22, we pick it up again. Joshua said to the two men who spied out the land, go into the prostitute's house. Still got her label. And bring her out and all who belong to her in accordance with your oath to her. So the young men who had done the spying went in and brought out Rahab, her father and mother and brothers and all who belonged to her. They brought out her entire family and put them in a place outside the camp of Israel. Outside the camp of Israel. Not with the people, but still letting them live. Joshua spared Rahab there's her label. Rahab the prostitute, with her family and all who belonged to her, because she hid the men Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho. And that's what Joshua did. But at some point, down the road, maybe 20, 30 years, this account is finally written. It wasn't written as it was happening. And somebody made sure it was written in there, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. This non-Jewish woman that has a pretty bad label for a background lives with them. If anyone thought their label, their past, their history would prevent them from a good future, it's Rahab. A foreigner, an outsider, lives with the nation of Israel with apparently honor, and now her story is being told in the first century to those who are claiming to follow Jesus, as Matthew writes it down. Rahab's story continues. This guy named Salmon, I know, named after a fish, kind of weird, right? Don't name your kid Walleye, all right? Rahab, Salmon marries her. In spite of her history, in spite of her label, Salmon marries her. And they have a son named Boaz. Boaz, I didn't even realize this until I restudied this message this week. Boaz probably at one point looked at his dad and said that was a courageous move. Looked at his mom and realized his mom's got a background, got a story that's a little bit different than everybody else's, which gave him the courage to marry Ruth. In spite of Ruth's history and label that we read about, their great-grandson is King David. 4 observations, and if you're following along this morning, take notes, now would be the time to start. We all have labels. We've all been called something we didn't desire and didn't choose. And like Rahab, some labels are self-inflicted, but some labels are just unfair. Some are maybe recent in your life. They've been discovered and it's humiliating, and maybe that's why you're back. Derek the divorced or Barry the bankrupt. Some labels you've tried to distance yourself from, but people never forget Doug the dropout, Frank the felon. Some labels are from an ex-spouse, and you so wish you could undo what you did. But when they see you, you know they're thinking of Amy the adulterer, Charles the cheater, Lucy the liar. Some labels are from secrets that nobody knows yet, but you label yourself Edward the embezzler, Thelma the thief, Peter the porn addict. And some of them aren't as obvious to everyone else. They're kind of a hidden. Gary the grudge holder, Evelyn the envious, Paul the prideful, Jenny the jealous, Adam the arrogant, Missy the malcontent, Susie the selfish. What would be on your label? If you're willing to, and you don't have to be, would you take one of your labels and write on it what might be on your label? You won't have to show anyone. I'm not asking you to wear it. But you may want to face it and own it and realize that's a label that people have labeled me. That's a label I've labeled myself. And whether I admit it or not, it limits me and it hinders me. Because once you have a label, the world will never let you outrun it. No matter how much you succeed, no matter how much you go beyond, the world's still going to think of you. Maybe your friends are going to think, it's one thing to come to work and have a respect. But when you go back to your family, they still remember, what does my family bring up? When I go back to my family, my mom's probably going to bring it up maybe at Christmas time. And if she's watching right now, she's probably laughing and going, I know what you're going to bring up, the day I sat on my breakfast. Or if where's my wallet? Because I always couldn't keep track of my wallet. And it was almost discouraging to be known for that, which is kind of crazy now because I can't think the last time that I misplaced anything like that, wallet or keys. It's really weird for me, and maybe that's flipping back the opposite way. What would you write on your label? If you want to dive in, write something down. But can I remind you, you don't have to lose your label before joining Jesus. Jesus invited in those on the outside. Jesus invited in enemies. He invited in lawbreakers. He invited in people who had labels that disqualified them through one simple act of faith. Jesus says plainly, and I hope you hear it in your heart, you are more than the worst thing you've ever done. You are way beyond the worst thing you've ever done or ever thought. His brother, James, put it like this: because judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful. Why? Mercy triumphs over judgment. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Jesus interrupts shame. When shame is speaking, when labels are speaking, Jesus interrupts shame. Your label might explain you, but Jesus says your label does not have to define you. I mean, how did Jesus respond to the guy that wrote the gospel we're looking at, the Gospel of Matthew? Matthew has a "the" in his name. He is Matthew the tax collector. That's about one of the filthiest things you could call someone in first century Jewish life. Tax collector. Nowadays it would be like calling somebody a Michigan fan. How did Jesus respond to Matthew the tax collector? Matthew, once you quit and get a different label, then you can follow me. He just said, follow me. Jesus invited people who were still wearing their label, regardless of their label. Rahab, the prostitute, was able, in spite of her label, in the telling of the first Christmas story. So apparently Christmas tells us no one is too bad, no one is too far gone, no one is beyond invitation. And that means you. No one is beyond invitation. Because our label doesn't limit God. Might limit you, doesn't limit him. I mean, Rahab's guilty. She's an outsider. And Jesus' grace is large enough and broad enough to cover that. Not just so that Rahab can have the privilege to believe, but apparently to belong as well. Your label might limit you in the world, yeah. Other people might limit you because of your label, whether it was an earned label or whether it was unfairly given. But your label doesn't limit God, and it's beyond belief. It's to the point of belonging, where you belong to him. You can look to him and say, I believe in you. He can look to you and say, you belong to me. You belong. And when someone looks you in the eye and loves you like that, one of the first things you probably want to do is hide the worst parts of you. But he already knows it. Because one act of faith can lift you above your label. Rahab, it was one simple act. See, it's not just a story about what Rahab did right. It's a story about how far grace can go. Grace can go that far. Christmas is about what God did for you, not what you can do for him. It's about what God did for you because it's things that you can't do for yourself. What if you changed your approach? What if we stopped bargaining with God to say, hey, I came, I served, I gave, I did this. And what if you declared about yourself what God says about you? Scripture actually tells us that in Revelation, we get new names. I wonder if Frank the Felon gets to be called Frank the Forgiven and Freed. I wonder if Alice the ostracized gets to be called Alice the accepted and connected. And I know that Laman the loser is now Laman the significant because of what he's done, because of how he's changed me. And he can change you as well. He wants to change you. Would you give him the chance? Would you lean in to the God who leaned in to you and came down, as we sang about, to you, and can change your label? So what would you write on your second label? Not because you've accomplished it, but because he declared it, and you're choosing to receive. I didn't earn this label. It was given to me. See, Jesus goes beyond forgiveness. Forgiveness is a negative. It negates something. It's not a bad thing. It removes something. You can forgive somebody and not want them in your life. The scriptural term of justification, it's the bestowal of a status. He gives you a status. What would you write on your second label? I would encourage you to put it over your first label, because your first label is old. Your first label is outdated. Your first label is an old covenant. The new one has made your first label obsolete, according to the writer of Hebrews. Stand with me, would you?